When I was a kid, I thought my parents were superheroes. You know that feeling when you're 5 years old, staring up at people who seem to know everything and control everything. Where dinner magically appears, lights always turn on, and your scraped knee gets a band-aid and a kiss that somehow makes it all better? That was my mom and dad. But now, at 30 years old, I've finally come to terms with the fact that the people who raised me have slowly transformed into strangers. Strangers who just so happen to be emotionally manipulative, financially irresponsible, and, in my dad's case, capable of saying something I'll never forget. My name's Darren. I'm 30 now, living in a modest two-bedroom apartment in Seattle with my dog, some half-dead plants I swear I'm trying to keep alive, and a solid job in data analysis that pays the bills, funds my quiet hobbies, and gives me the kind of peace I never had growing up. I'm not rich, but I'm stable. And to my parents, that apparently makes me an ATM with a guilt button. It started earlier this year with a call in January. "Hey, Darren, we just need a little help to get through this month," my mom had said. Her voice was soft, even sweet, like it always is when she's about to ask for something. They needed $5,000 to catch up on mortgage payments, cover some bills, and get back on track. I didn't ask too many questions. I just sent it. I told myself it was fine. I could afford it. And they raised me, right? This was me giving back. Then came the second call in April. This time it was my dad. Less sweet, more direct. "Look, I'll just be honest with you, Darren. We're in a tough spot. We made some investments that didn't pan out, and the bank's threatening action. We just need $10,000. You'll get it back, I swear." I hesitated. 10 grand wasn't pocket change. But then I thought about my siblings, my younger sister, Vanessa, who's still floating through her 20s like it's a gap year that never ended, and my brother, Jason, who's always between jobs, but somehow has a new gaming console every time I visit. They weren't stepping up. They never did. It was always me. So I caved. Again, wired them the money, told them it was the last time, and tried not to think about what they were doing with it. But in the back of my mind, something started to crack. A little voice that kept whispering, "This isn't helping them. It's enabling them." And then came the third call, just last week. I'd just finished walking Baxter, my overly dramatic beagle who insists on sniffing the same 3 bushes for 20 minutes every night. I was back on the couch, heating up leftovers, when my phone buzzed. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I didn't answer at first. I let it go to voicemail. But then, 5 minutes later, it rang again. This time, Dad. "Hey." I answered, pressing the phone to my ear as I stirred the pasta in the microwave. "Darren," he said without preamble. "We need 15 grand. I froze. "No, how are you?" No lead-in. Just straight to the point. 15,000. I repeated, stunned. "For what?" "The house," he said. "The bank's pushing hard. We're trying to refinance, but we're short, and your mother's been stressing herself sick over this. We figured, look, you helped us before, you can help us now. Just this one last time." That phrase, "just this one last time," it made my stomach twist. Because I knew it wasn't the last. It never was. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, steadying my voice. "I can't. I've already helped twice this year. I told you last time, it was the last time. I have to take care of my own life, too." The silence on the other end wasn't just awkward. It was heavy, ominous. And then my dad snapped. "You know," he said, voice rising in a way that made me instinctively pull the phone away from my ear. "We'd actually have money saved if you were never born, and we didn't have to raise you." It hit me like a slap. My breath caught. I didn't even respond. I just hung up, blocked his number, then Mom's, then Vanessa's, who texted me 30 seconds later saying, "Please just talk to him." Then Jason's, who added, "You're being selfish, man." Now they're saying I'm heartless. That Mom and Dad might lose their house. That I'm the reason. But here's the thing. This isn't just about money. This is about years of being the responsible one. The one who always handled things, kept quiet, didn't make waves. It's about being the oldest and carrying everyone's burdens without question. It's about how I was treated growing up, not just differently, but like I owed them something for being born. Like my life was a bill they never stopped paying, and now it was time for me to reimburse them with interest. And maybe I would have kept helping. Maybe I would have found a way to justify one more check. But when he said that, when he said they'd be better off if I'd never existed, something inside me snapped, too. Not in anger, in clarity. It wasn't the first time he said something cruel, just the first time I finally believed he meant it. And that's where everything started to change. I haven't told anyone else this yet, not even my best friend, not even my therapist. I'm still processing, still trying to figure out what I'm going to do. But something tells me this time, I'm not going to let it slide. Not again, because I'm done being the fallback plan. I'm done being their emotional crutch and financial safety net. And if my siblings think I'm heartless for walking away, they haven't seen anything yet. I didn't sleep the night he said it. I lay there staring at the ceiling, Baxter snoring beside me, my mind racing through 1,000 memories I didn't ask to relive. My dad's words echoed, on loop. We'd actually have money saved if you were never born. It didn't matter how I twisted them in my head, tried to file them away as an emotional outburst, or tell myself he didn't mean it. Because he did. You can't say something like that unless you've thought it before. And something told me that wasn't the first time the thought crossed his mind. Just the first time he said it out loud. The next morning, I didn't reach out. I didn't unblock anyone. I went to work, I answered emails, I took my lunch break and watched dumb videos to drown out the noise in my head. And when I came home, there were 5 voicemails waiting for me. 2 from Vanessa, 1 from Jason, and 2 from a number I didn't recognize but immediately knew was either my mom borrowing a friend's phone or my dad using his work line. I didn't listen to them, but I did open my email. There, sitting in my inbox like a digital grenade, was a message titled, "We need to talk, Darren." It was from my mother. Against my better judgment, I opened it. "Darren, I don't know what your father said on the phone, but I'm sure it came out wrong. He's under a lot of pressure, and sometimes he says things he doesn't mean. Please understand that we're not trying to hurt you. We're just in a very difficult position. The house means everything to us. We raised you kids there. Every holiday, every memory, it all happened inside those walls. We don't want to lose it. But if we don't get the funds by the end of the month, we might. Your siblings have their own struggles right now. You're the only one who's stable enough to help. And frankly, we don't know what else to do. Please call me back. I miss you. Love, Mom." I read it 3 times. Not once did she apologize. Not once did she acknowledge what my dad said, really said. Not once did she ask how I was doing. It was a carefully worded guilt trip, and I could practically hear her rehearsing each line in her head before typing it. It wasn't a message from a mother to her son. It was a plea from someone who saw me as their last resort. Their golden goose. I didn't reply. That weekend, I got a knock on my door. At first, I thought it was my neighbor. He sometimes swings by when Amazon accidentally drops his packages at my door. But when I looked through the peephole, my stomach dropped. It was Vanessa. She was bundled up in a long camel coat, her hair piled into a messy bun, holding her phone in one hand and a coffee in the other like she'd just stopped by casually. Like this wasn't incredibly intrusive. I didn't open the door. Not right away. I just stood there debating. Then she knocked again and called out, "Darren, I know you're home. Your car's outside." I sighed and opened the door a crack. "What do you want?" She blinked, taken aback by how flat my voice was. "Can I come in?" "No." "Seriously? You showed up uninvited." "I'm asking you seriously." She gave an annoyed huff and crossed her arms. "Okay, fine. I'll say it from here. Mom's been crying for 3 days. Dad's barely eating. You can't just ghost the whole family because of one phone call." I clenched my jaw. "You don't know what he said." "I don't care what he said," she snapped. "He was upset. You're not being fair." I just stared at her. I couldn't even form words at first. "You don't care what he said?" I repeated, slowly. "Vanessa, he told me they'd be better off if I was never born." She didn't respond. She looked away, eyes suddenly shifting to the cracks in the pavement. "Yeah," I said bitterly. "That shut you up." "He didn't mean it," she muttered, finally. "He just lashed out." "Look, I get it, okay? They messed up. But you know Dad. He doesn't apologize, but that doesn't mean he doesn't regret it." I almost laughed. "He doesn't apologize? Why is that an excuse?" "It's just who he is," she said with a shrug, as if that explained everything. As if all these years of verbal jabs and manipulations could be filed away under just his personality. "No, Vanessa. It's not just who he is. It's who he chose to be." She looked at me again, this time with something colder in her eyes. "You think you're better than us because you have a job and a savings account." I was stunned. "What? That's what this is really about, isn't it?" she said, stepping forward. "You've always been the favorite in the eyes of outsiders. The one who got out. The one who made it. But you're just as selfish as the rest of us. You just hide it better." I stared at her, feeling something shift inside me. I had taken care of her when we were kids, covered for her when she snuck out, helped her with college applications she never submitted, gave her rent money twice when she moved out, and burned bridges with 2 different landlords. And now here she was, standing on my doorstep, calling me selfish. Go home, Vanessa, I said quietly. This conversation is over. She didn't move. I mean it, I said. You crossed a line. All of you did. And I'm done pretending this family isn't broken. Her face tightened. You'll regret this. Maybe, I said, and shut the door. That was the first time I truly felt the break. Not a crack, a full sever. And then came Jason. He showed up 3 days later. I don't know how they coordinated it, but the knock on my door felt like déjà vu. This time, I didn't answer. I stayed on the couch and waited for him to go away. He didn't. He waited outside for nearly 15 minutes, then slid a note under my door. It said, "You can't turn your back on blood. They won't say it, but they need you. We need you." There it was again. We. As if this was some shared burden, as if they'd ever lifted a finger to help me when I needed it. Jason had always been the charming one, the peacemaker, the one who laughed off every problem until someone else dealt with it. And now he was trying to pull me back in with poetic little notes and emotional blackmail. But the worst part, the real twist of the knife, didn't come from any of them. It came from the letter I got in the mail 5 days later. It was addressed to me, in my mother's handwriting. Inside was a printout of a loan application, a joint loan, with my name on it, and a forged signature. At first, I didn't even understand what I was looking at. Then I saw the amount, $20,000, and the lender, a local credit union I'd used years ago for a car loan. My chest went tight. My hands started to shake. I called the bank immediately, and after verifying my identity, they confirmed it was already being processed. The funds hadn't been disbursed yet, but the application had been submitted. My own parents had forged my signature. I don't know what scared me more, that they had the audacity to do it, or that they'd clearly planned it. I hung up the phone, heart pounding, rage boiling, and sat in silence for a long time. And in that silence, something in me hardened. This wasn't just about a toxic family anymore. This wasn't about guilt or obligation or even forgiveness. This was war, and I was done playing nice. I didn't cry when I saw the loan documents. I didn't scream, or call them, or throw anything against the wall like you'd see in a movie. I just sat there, the papers shaking in my hand, my stomach in knots, and I went completely still. The kind of stillness that comes when a part of you shuts down. A quiet implosion. I called the credit union first, then the fraud department. I filed a report, explained that the signature was forged, that I had never agreed to the loan. I was put on hold multiple times, transferred between departments. I had to fax over copies of my driver's license and old signatures. I had to write a statement explaining everything. And when the woman on the other end of the line finally said, "Okay, we'll halt the processing," I felt a brief, fleeting sense of relief. Until she added, "We'll also have to investigate the origin of the application. If the names you gave match our records and someone used your identity, this could become a legal matter. Are you prepared for that?" Prepared? I wasn't even sure how to breathe. I said yes. What else could I say? After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for hours. Baxter curled up at my feet, sensing something was wrong, but not understanding what. I looked around at the life I'd built, modest, stable, mine, and felt it wobble like it was on glass legs. Not because of the money, but because it was the last straw. How do you come back from that? My parents had always been manipulative. They twisted guilt into an art form. But forging my signature for a $20,000 loan? That wasn't just desperation. That was betrayal on a level I didn't know they were capable of. And suddenly everything from my childhood looked different. I remembered the times my allowance went missing, only for Mom to say I must have spent it and forgot. The savings bonds from my grandparents that disappeared mysteriously when I turned 18. The way my college fund dried up during my junior year, even though I had been told for years it was there and growing. Back then, I had blamed bad investments, like they said. But now I wasn't so sure. The fall didn't happen all at once. It never does. It came in waves. I stopped sleeping well. I started skipping meals without realizing it. My work started to suffer. I'd be in the middle of writing a report and suddenly find myself staring at the screen, not remembering what I was even doing. My boss pulled me aside after a week and asked if everything was okay. I lied and said I was dealing with some health issues. He nodded with concern and told me to take whatever time I needed. So I took a few days off. Not to rest, to clean up. I made copies of every message, every email, every document. I opened a secure folder on my computer. I password-locked my online banking and set up alerts for every transaction. I even spoke to a lawyer, an old college friend who specialized in family and financial disputes. I didn't tell him everything, just enough. He told me what steps to take, how to protect myself, what documentation to save in case this escalates. That phrase chilled me. In case this escalates. As if we weren't already on a cliff's edge. But through all of that, I didn't talk to anyone about it. Not even my closest friends. I didn't want pity. I didn't want to answer the inevitable question. Are you going to forgive them? Because I didn't know. All I knew was I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out everything good in me and left a shell behind. The lowest point came the night after I got an email from the credit union's fraud team. They confirmed the IP address on the loan application had come from my parents' neighborhood. That was it. The confirmation I didn't want but already knew. No more room for denial. I went for a drive that night. It was cold. Rainy. Baxter curled in the passenger seat while I drove aimlessly through Seattle's side streets, the city lights bleeding through the windshield. I pulled over near the waterfront, shut off the engine, and just sat there. I thought about calling them. Just once. Maybe to scream. Maybe to cry. Maybe to ask them why. But the phone stayed in my pocket. Because I already knew what they'd say. They'd deny it. Or worse. They'd say it was my fault for not helping them when they asked nicely. That night, I realized something. I wasn't grieving just the betrayal. I was grieving the illusion of who I thought they were. I wasn't their son. Not really. I was their safety net. Their retirement plan. Their bailout fund. And the second I said no, they cashed out anyway. That's when the rise began. It didn't start with some grand epiphany. No Rocky-style training montage. Just a quiet morning where I woke up, made coffee, and decided to take my life back. The first thing I did was call HR at work. I told them I needed a referral for mental health support. They gave me a list of therapists, and by the end of the week, I had my first session booked. Her name was Mel. Mid-40s, kind eyes, no-nonsense attitude. I told her everything, slowly, carefully. She listened. She didn't rush to tell me it would all be okay. She just let me be, which was exactly what I needed. In our third session, I asked her, "Is it normal to feel like your whole childhood was a lie?" She nodded and said, "It's normal to feel that way when the people who raised you turn out to be something else. But that doesn't make you a lie. It just means you survived." Survived. That word hit me hard. I wasn't broken. I was a survivor. And survivors rebuild. I started journaling. Not every day, but often enough to get the thoughts out of my head and onto paper. I went back to work with new focus, slowly regaining my rhythm. My boss noticed. He gave me a quiet thumbs up in a meeting that made me smile more than it should have. I took up running again, something I hadn't done since college. It wasn't glamorous, just laps around a nearby park with Baxter in tow, but it felt good to move, to sweat, to let my body remind me I was still here. I also started setting boundaries in ways I never had before. I blocked any number I didn't recognize. I told mutual family friends, when they called or messaged, that I wasn't discussing the situation. If they pushed, I ended the conversation. I didn't need anyone's approval or permission to protect my peace. But the most important shift happened quietly, in the way I started thinking about myself. For the first time in years, I stopped defining my worth by how helpful I was, by how much I could give. I started asking what I wanted, what I needed, and I realized I wanted more. More joy, more space, more distance from the wreckage of my family's dysfunction. So I started planning. I made a list. Things I'd been putting off because I was always waiting for the right time or saving just in case. Travel, classes, even small things like upgrading my furniture or trying new recipes. I bought a new mattress, booked a weekend trip to Vancouver, signed up for a pottery class at a local art studio just because it sounded fun. None of it was extravagant, but it was mine. Every choice, every dollar spent, it was for me. Not for someone else's emergency. Not for someone else's guilt trip. And each one felt like reclaiming a little piece of my identity. And slowly, very slowly, I started feeling like myself again. Until one day, a letter arrived. Not an email, not a call, a physical letter. Handwritten, no return address. I almost didn't open it. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page. "Darren, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I need you to know that your mother didn't know about the loan." That was me. She didn't want me to do it. We fought. She cried. I did it anyway. I know you probably hate me now. I deserve that. But I need you to understand. I wasn't trying to hurt you. I just didn't see another way. We're losing everything. Dad. That was it. No apology. No promise to fix it. Just an explanation that shifted the blame and begged for pity. But instead of rage, all I felt was nothing. Not coldness. Not even resentment. Just the confirmation of something I'd already known. He wasn't sorry. He was desperate. And desperate people don't change unless they're forced to. Which meant if I wanted closure, peace, or even just distance, I'd have to make it happen myself. And I would. Because I wasn't that scared little kid anymore. I wasn't the responsible one or the fallback plan. I was done surviving. It was time to take control. It took me a week to decide what to do with the letter. I read it twice the first day, folded it neatly, tucked it in the back of a drawer I rarely opened. Not because I wanted to keep it, but because something told me I might need it later. And when you're dealing with people like my father, you learn quickly that everything is evidence. Even his pathetic attempt at a confession. Mel, my therapist, asked me what I wanted to do next. Honestly, I told her, I want to disappear. I want to walk away from all of it and never look back. She nodded. Then why haven't you? I hesitated. Because the truth was, a part of me wanted to disappear, but a bigger part of me wanted them to watch me disappear. I wanted them to feel it. I wanted them to sit in the house they almost lost, surrounded by unpaid bills and failed schemes, and finally understand that the person they always assumed would catch them was gone. Not angry, not yelling, just done. But more than that, I wanted them to answer for what they did. Not just to me, but to the version of me that wasted decades trying to earn love that was conditional. The kid who believed that if he gave enough, been enough, stayed quiet enough, he'd be enough. So I stopped thinking about forgiveness, and I started planning revenge. Not the dramatic, movie-style kind. I wasn't going to key their car or burn bridges on social media. That wasn't me. I was going to take back what they stole, and then some. But first, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I started with their house, the one they were so desperate to save. It took some digging, but public records are public for a reason. After a few hours scouring county tax records and mortgage filings, I found it. The deed, the lien history, and the most recent refinancing attempt. And what I saw made me sit back in my chair and whistle low. They weren't just in trouble. They were drowning. The house had been refinanced 3 times in the last 5 years. The original mortgage had ballooned with bad interest rates, and based on the latest filing, they were behind by at least $30,000. The bank hadn't foreclosed yet, but the pre-foreclosure notice had already gone out. In short, they were out of options. Unless, of course, they had someone like me. Someone with good credit. Someone with stable income and no debt. Someone they'd tried to use. I kept reading. A name kept popping up on the paperwork. A man named Doug Wexler. He wasn't a family friend or neighbor. He was a private loan officer affiliated with a smaller regional lender known for giving risky loans to desperate borrowers. I looked him up. Sleazy as they come. Reviews were full of horror stories, jacked up fees, balloon payments, threats of legal action over missed payments. And my parents had gone to him? That told me everything. They were running out of people to manipulate. I filed that away. Next, I dug through my own records. Bank statements, transfers, old texts, even screenshots of Venmo receipts from years ago when I'd sent them a little something to help. I added it up. Over $67,000. That's how much I had given them over the last decade. Some of it small, some of it huge, all of it unreturned. I stared at that number for a long time. Then I pulled out my phone and called someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Her name was Gina. She was my mom's cousin. We hadn't been close growing up, but I remembered her being one of the few adults who saw things. She was blunt, smart, and always had this way of calling out family BS without flinching. "Darren?" she said when she answered. "Wow, I haven't heard from you in what, 10 years? 8, I said. But yeah, a while. What's going on? I need some context, I said. About my parents. About the family. There was a pause. Is this about the loan they tried to take out in your name? My stomach dropped. How did you know? She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Because they tried the same thing with me last year. Didn't get far. I shut it down fast. But they're scrambling, Darren. They've burned a lot of bridges. I exhaled slowly. Why didn't you tell me? Because I figured you were still playing the role of good son. Didn't think you'd believe me. I sat with that. She wasn't wrong. Gina and I talked for over an hour. She filled in gaps I hadn't even known existed. Turns out, my parents had borrowed money from several relatives over the years. Small loans, big loans, everything in between. My mom had even told one cousin that Darren's doing great. He promised to pay it all back once he gets promoted. They were using me as collateral for other lies. I asked Gina if she still had any of the messages or paperwork. She said yes. I asked her if she'd be willing to share it. She didn't hesitate. That was step one. Step two was contacting the credit union again, this time to press fraud charges. Not just cancel the loan. I wasn't playing nice anymore. The rep explained that since the application had been stopped before the funds were released, it fell into a gray area. But if I pursued it formally, they'd be required to investigate, and it could become a legal matter for the person who submitted the form. "Do you want to proceed?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "I want a full investigation." And just like that, I stopped being their son and became their liability. Step 3 was protecting myself. I froze my credit with all 3 bureaus, set fraud alerts, updated my legal will to exclude them completely. I even added a line stating that any claim of dependency or financial ties to them was false and should be considered attempted fraud. Mel said I was finally establishing boundaries. But it felt like more than that. It felt like justice. Then came the opportunity one hadn't expected. My job had recently partnered with a local financial literacy nonprofit to offer mentorships for young adults trying to escape cycles of generational debt. They were looking for volunteers, people with experience navigating family financial abuse. I signed up. It was weird at first, talking to strangers about money, about shame, about boundaries. But every time I told a piece of my story, I felt lighter, stronger. And every time someone nodded and said, "That's exactly what I'm going through," I realized I wasn't alone. For the first time in years, I felt like I had power. Not over them, over myself. But the real setup, the move that would shift everything, came when I discovered something buried in an old shoebox at the back of my closet. It was a copy of the deed to a small plot of land in Oregon. My grandfather's, left to me when he passed, but never developed. I had completely forgotten about it. I called a real estate agent friend, asked him to assess it. He called back a week later. "It's nothing fancy," he said. "But with the zoning changes this year, you could flip it to a developer for 6 figures. Maybe more." 6 figures. I stared at the deed. My parents didn't even know I still had it. They probably assumed it had been sold or was worthless. But it wasn't. And suddenly, an idea formed. An idea that would give me closure, leverage, and one last message they'd never forget. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to fight. I was going to build something from the wreckage and then show them what they lost. But first, I needed to make sure the pieces were in place. The fraud case was moving forward. Gina had emailed me every document she had. The financial mentorship program wanted me to speak at an event. And the land deal? That was shaping up to be bigger than I imagined. I started drawing up plans. Not out of spite, out of clarity, because they took everything they could from me. Now it was time I gave them something back. Not money, not forgiveness, but the cold, undeniable truth. They burned the bridge, and I was building a new road, with their names carved into the concrete as a warning. It was quiet the morning everything fell into place. I made coffee like I always did, black, strong, 2 sugars. Baxter sat by the window watching birds he'd never catch. The sky outside was gray, soft with fog, and I remember thinking it felt like the right kind of weather for what I was about to do. Not dramatic, not loud, just inevitable. Revenge doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it arrives dressed in silence and paperwork, disguised as professionalism. By that point, the fraud case was officially opened. The credit union's investigation had wrapped. My father was flagged for identity theft. They confirmed the IP match, the timing, the forged signature, and even a phone call he made to clarify details on my behalf. He had pretended to be me, used my name, my social security number. The email he listed on the application was an old Gmail I hadn't used in 5 years, probably pulled from an old form or bill I left at their house. He hadn't just crossed a line. He built a whole damn bridge over it and set fire to everything behind him. They informed me that since I pressed charges, the matter would be handed off to a local prosecutor. There was a possibility of restitution. Jail time was unlikely. First-time offender, nonviolent. But the charge would stick on his record unless he fought it in court and won. I didn't flinch. Let him try. But that wasn't the satisfying part. Not yet. That came when I sold the land. The Oregon plot. The one my grandfather left me in a forgotten corner of his will, hidden beneath years of silence and legal dust. I hadn't thought about it in a decade, but it turned out the area around it had grown into a hot market for eco-retreat developers and tiny home communities. The buyer who reached out was a startup with a mission to turn abandoned plots into modern rustic escapes. They offered me $142,000. Cash. I signed the papers the same day. And then I bought the house next to my parents. No, not the house they lived in, the one next door. A slightly newer model. Similar layout. Better insulation. It had gone up for sale after the previous owner passed away, and the heirs wanted it off their hands quickly. The moment I saw it listed, I knew it was the perfect piece of the puzzle. I didn't buy it to move in. I bought it to watch. To remind them, every day, that I wasn't hiding. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't begging anyone for help. I was thriving, and I made sure they knew it. The first time I visited the property, I parked in front of their house, just long enough for my mom to peek through the curtains. I waved. She didn't wave back. The second time, I brought a contractor. We stood on the lawn, pointing at the fence line, talking about landscaping, tree removal, and remodeling plans. My dad came out to take the trash and saw me. We locked eyes. He didn't say a word, just turned and walked back inside. By the time the third visit rolled around, I had a key and an idea. I installed security cameras that faced their driveway, but not illegally, just enough to make them wonder. I had the siding redone, a new mailbox installed, and I had the contractor leave a for lease, contact Darren sign in the window for 2 weeks. It was a fake number. No one would answer, but it sent a message. I'm not going anywhere, and I'm not yours anymore. Meanwhile, the family began to fracture. Gina told me that once the fraud charges hit, the ripple effect was immediate. The extended relatives started pulling away. People who had quietly lent my parents money realized they weren't the only ones. The group chats dried up. Invitations stopped. And when the rumor of the criminal investigation reached the church committee my mom volunteered for, she was asked to take a break from leadership. Vanessa reached out, one last time. A long, emotional text full of half-baked apologies, blaming stress, economy, mental health, family pressure, and how hard things have been since Grandma passed. She didn't mention the loan. She didn't mention what my dad said. I didn't respond. Jason emailed, not to apologize, but to ask for advice on how to rebuild trust with people after things fall apart. I told him to start with honesty. He never replied. And my parents? They went silent. Utterly, completely silent. Until the foreclosure notice went up. Not on my property. On theirs. I saw it one morning, stapled to their front door. I had just pulled into the driveway next door to check the locks and update some paperwork. Baxter was in the back seat. I glanced over, saw the paper flapping slightly in the breeze, and just stared. It was official. The bank was reclaiming their home. They had 60 days to vacate. I didn't smile. I didn't feel joy, but I felt something I hadn't felt in a long, long time. Peace. They had every chance, every opportunity to turn things around. I had given them more than most children ever do. Forgiveness, patience, money, time. And still, they had chosen to betray me, manipulate me, and attempt to steal from me. They didn't need a lifeline. They needed consequences. In the final days before the eviction, my mom tried one last move. A letter. No envelope. Just folded, taped to my front door at the house next door. I knew her handwriting. It was brief. No greeting. No salutation. Just this. I hope it was worth it. You were supposed to be our son, not our enemy. That was the last time I heard from either of them. The house sold at auction 3 months later. A young couple bought it and started renovating. I introduced myself as the neighbor. I even helped them haul debris once, just to be kind. And eventually, the whispers stopped. The texts stopped. The guilt stopped. I didn't need to explain myself, because the people who mattered never would have treated me like that to begin with. And the people who did, they don't matter anymore. My therapist asked me recently if I ever miss them. Sometimes, I said. Then I paused. But it's not them I miss. It's the version of them I used to hope existed. The version I made up in my head. She smiled. That version wasn't real, she said. And she was right. The real version burned a bridge I spent years trying to repair. So I walked away and built a kingdom on the ashes. I wasn't the villain in their story. I was just the first one who stopped playing along.